Propaganda is ubiquitous and everyone uses propaganda. It's a kind of communication that makes a case for a goal bypassing reason. So what it does is it's a method to urge you to mobilize towards something while concealing from you things that you reasonably should think, should consider. Have these irrational biases, and what propaganda does is it takes notions like freedom, integrity, and it weds them to these irrational biases. Operation Iraqi Freedom is what the Iraq War was called. Why was killing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis called Operation Iraqi Freedom? Because the idea was somehow freedom is what Americans do. If we're doing it, it must be freedom. The word propaganda by itself is neither good nor bad, because we talk of abolitionist propaganda. We talk about the propaganda that people use in social movements. Social movements need propaganda. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the need for propaganda, because you need to get people to reconsider their racist assumptions. Get people to reconsider their racist assumptions.
I guess I could use some of this time to get into pleasantries and to talk about the many experiences I've had with you, not only here, but in Europe and other places. What do you have in store for us this summer?
That's a good question. Well, I don't know about the summer. I guess I should begin with what we have in store for the spring. I feel that we are in the midst of the most critical period in our nation, and the economic problem is probably the most serious problem confronting the Negro community, and I might say the most serious problem confronting poor people generally. And we are confronting a major depression in the poor community. And I think the time has come to bring to bear the power of the direct action, the nonviolent direct action movement, on the basic economic conditions that we face all over the country. Nonviolence has been a tremendous force in grappling with the social problem of legal segregation and the syndrome of deprivation surrounding that system. And of course it has been a major force in grappling with the political problem of the denial of the right to vote. But in winning victories like the Civil Rights Bill of '64 and the Voting Rights Bill of 1965 around the issue of segregation and voting rights, we discovered that these legislative strides did very little to improve the lot of the millions of Negroes in the ghettos of the North and in the nation generally. In other words, it did very little to penetrate the lower depths of Negro deprivation in communities all over.
The night before his assassination, King gave one of the most remarkable speeches of his whole career. One of the themes was the idea that protest itself was really in peril. You were seeing crackdowns all across the country, increasing concerns about violence, and he was really making a claim that in Memphis, it wasn't just the rights of workers, it wasn't just racial justice that was on the line, but it was also the right to speech, the right to protest, the First Amendment itself.
If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
This particular point of view. And I contend that the cry of black power is at bottom a reaction to the reluctance of white power to make the kind of changes necessary to make justice a reality for the Negro. I think we've got to see that a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the economic plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years.
How many summers like this one do you imagine that we can expect?
Well, I will say this, we don't have long. The mood of the Negro community now is one of urgency, one of saying that we aren't going to wait, that we've got to have our freedom. We've waited too long. So that I would say that every summer we're going to have this kind of vigorous protest. My hope is that it will be nonviolent. I would hope that we can avoid riots because riots are self-defeating and socially destructive. I would hope that we can avoid riots, but that we will be as militant and as determined next summer and through the winter as we have been this summer. And I think the answer about how long it will take will depend on the federal government, on the city halls of our various cities, and on white America to a large extent. This is where we are at this point, and I think white America will determine how long it will be and which way we go in the future.
Even Senator Jacob Javits asked the question recently. He said that he was a slum resident, but he and some of his fellow Jews were able to make it out of the ghetto on the Lower East Side. The same thing is true with lots of Irish, Italians. And he asked the question why the Negro finds it so difficult to make his way up out of the ghetto.
Number one, no other racial group has been a slave on American soil. It's nice to say other people were down, they got up. They were not slaves on American soil. The other thing is that the Negro has had high visibility. And because of the prejudices existing in this country, his color has been against him. It's been against him, and they've used this to keep him from moving up. And the final analysis, when you say to a man that you are in this position because of your race or because of your color, you say to that man that he can never get out of it. Other racial groups have been able maybe to change the accent or change the names, but the Negro can't.
What does it mean to be human? Especially in light of a vicious of white supremacy in which people's humanity is perennially called into question, interrogated, has to be proven, never taken for granted. Told they have the wrong hips and lips and noses and hair texture and skin pigmentation, and the world begins to believe it. Told they're less beautiful, less intelligent, less moral. Rationalizations for subjugation and subordination. Enslavement, Jim Crow, Jane Crowed, discriminated against. Not solely as victims, our right-wing brothers and sisters are wrong. Never solely as victims. The victimization has been in place, but the sense of agency has always been exercised and enacted. When you look at the best of the struggle for freedom in the midst of this American civilization that presupposed that it was the exemplar of freedom and liberty.